A well-known phrase, "everything is bigger in Texas," also applies to its wildlife. Today, the Lone Star State is considered one of the most biologically diverse places in the United States, as its westland has become home to over 100 mammal species, including mountain lions, black bears, and prairie wolves. Even though the territory of Texas is highly competitive, some animal species have found it a perfect place to live in. In today's video, I will be focusing on some of the most harmful invasive species that inhabit the territory of Texas. To discover our first species, we need to travel to South America, which is also known as the home to some of the largest rodents in the world, including the famously known Nutria. This big black rodent is often confused with the capybara due to its large size and a similar appearance. However, you can easily identify Nutria by its large yellow teeth and a long tail. They were first introduced into the United States through the fur industry between 1899 and 1930, and since then they have become a major problem in most US states. A typical Nutria becomes sexually mature at around 3 months, and their first litter comes at around 8 months, giving birth to an average of 4 cubs 2 times per year. You don't need to be a great mathematician to understand how harmful is that for the unprepared ecological system. Even though I really like nutrias for being cute and chilly, the unintentional damage they cause to the ecosystem of Texas is immense. It's not a secret that the climate of this US state highly resembles its native range in South America, and that's why millions of nutria choose it as a new home. Of course, this couldn't have gone without consequences, so that's why farmers are losing millions of dollars each year because nutrias feed on their sugarcane and rice plantations. They have also eroded thousands of acres of marshlands and floodplains by feeding on planted seedlings and saplings. If you have experience of dealing with nutrias on your farms, please let me know in the comments below about it. Without a doubt, the nutria is a highly destructive species for the ecosystem of Texas. For our next species, we need to travel to the African continent, a place full of dangerous predators. However, the African cloud frog isn't one of them. Its name derives from its unique looking toes, which they use for feeding, as this genus of frog has no teeth or tongue, so these claws are used as a hands to shovel the food into the mouth. This frog is also considered a pretty common pet across the world, and that's how it appeared in the United States. Since the 1960s, they were released in several ponds across the country, and by the 1990s, the African cloud frog was spread in numerous southern states. However, you can't find it in the states like New York or Maine, as it requires a high temperature to survive, so that even in Africa, they can be found only south of Sahara. Unfortunately, those frogs have considered Texas a great place to live, and over the past few decades, their population has only increased. Even though today they don't pose a catastrophic threat to the ecology of Texas, it is only a matter of time before their numbers are so high that the native frogs of Texas will suffer. The African cloud frog is known to feed on juveniles, fish and other frogs, so that's why we have to pay attention to defend the local species from being eaten. Rio Grande leopard frog, Thousand leopard frog, Houston toad and many others are endangered because of it. Still, I really enjoy the African cloud frog for its unique evolution, but I think that they should be restricted from the other fish and frogs for saving the ecology of Texas. If you keep this pet at home, just make sure that it won't escape from your house. Except for that, I wish you enjoy having such a cool pet. The African cloud frog is one of the most unusual frogs I have seen in my life, but it doesn't mean that we should forget about its potential danger. Fortunately, we don't need to travel far to discover our next species, as it also inhabits the African continent. The African rock python is considered one of the most dangerous invasive species in the United States, and not without a reason. It is considered the largest known snake species native to Africa, with some adults reaching an insane 30 inches in length. However, it isn't just a big number, it means that they got only few natural predators except for alligators. In their native habitat, which is the sub-Saharan Africa, they can be found in various habitats, including forests, grasslands, deserts, and rocky regions. The African rock python was first introduced to the United States through the pet trade around 30 years ago, and since then it has established a stable population in Florida that closely resembles its native habitat. Today, if you try to release one of these dangerous snakes in the wild, you'll get penalties of up to $4,000 or 1 year in a prison. It is also considered very aggressive, so if you see one, make sure to protect kids and pets as they are considered at the most risk of attack. The African rock python is a true danger of Texas, so its place on this list is highly deserved. However, you don't have to be a dangerous predator to harm the ecosystem, as the next member of this list isn't a predator at all. The orange bishop is a vibrant and beautiful species of bird which is native to the sub-Saharan Africa. It isn't the first member of the list whose home is in Africa, so the trend of the colonization of Texas by the African species is on the rising. Even though the orange bishop is a pretty peaceful bird, that doesn't mean that it can't hurt the ecosystem of Texas, as the competition for crops and bugs with the other native birds puts them in a danger of hunger. They were first introduced to the Western Hemisphere in the 1960s, and since then many birds have escaped captivity and established populations across the country. The level of danger they cause to the ecosystem is still studying, but the trend is obvious. The number of invasive species in Texas is on the rise, and it's only a question of time before their population can get out of control. Fortunately, the orange bishop has only a few colonies in Texas, which are regularly monitored, so the situation is stable. That's why I find it a good chance to enjoy its brilliant plumage, as seeing such a bright bird isn't a common thing in today's life. Even though I find this bird stunningly beautiful, I understand that its population has to be controlled for the best of Texas and its local birds. The orange bishop is a fantastic bird that deserves its place in today's list. The following species on the list is considered one of the most destructive invasive animals in the United States. They are responsible for the local extirpations of numerous birds, plants and animals, including the gopher tortoise, Northern bobwhite, mottled duck, and etc. The wild boar is one of the most dangerous invasive species throughout the world, as when they get to the new place, they not only start competing with other animals for food sources, but they will also harm the surrounding environments by rooting up and consuming the native plants. In addition, those feral pigs are quite aggressive, so when they compete with other animals for food, they can seriously damage or even kill them. It has already harmed the population of the Rio Grande wild turkeys in Texas, as their population is about 6 times smaller than that of pigs. Today, the population of the wild boars in Texas is considered to be around 3 million individuals, and that's only in the Lone Star State. However, the history of the wild boar in the United States began in the 1900s with a small population introduced for hunting. Since then, wild pigs have colonized much of the United States, and now they can be found from the shores of the Pacific coast to the Canadian border in Michigan and New Hampshire. Despite some progress in fighting with feral hogs, they still cause severe economic damage in the south. The numbers are estimated to be around $2.5 billion each year, and it's crazy to think that just a simple wild pig can cause so much damage to the economy nowadays. I won't lie if I say that the wild boar is the most destructive animal species we have covered in this list. The next species we will be taking a look at isn't a usual one, as it was considered a sacred animal in ancient Egypt. Unlike the feral hogs, the Egyptian goose is the least harmful invasive species in today's list, but it doesn't mean that it can cause danger to the ecosystem of Texas. Remember that the appearance of a new species always increases the competition for the local animals, and thus the chances of their survival are declining. In addition, the Egyptian goose is territorial, so it becomes very aggressive when other birds or animal species enter its territory. Such behavior can cause a local extinction of native birds of Texas, so we should keep an eye on them. However, what I like the most about this goose species is the coloration of its juveniles. Just take a look at this adorable baby with fluffy spotted feathers. The estimated population of this bird in Texas remains unknown, but it isn't great enough to pose a major threat to the surrounding area. If you live in one of the states shown on the map, you've got a unique opportunity to meet those geese in the wild. In the place where I live, I've got a pond in a close proximity to my house, and sometimes I can witness several dozens ducks swimming in it. And believe me, watching them is a fantastic way to enjoy the nature and spend your free time. The Egyptian goose is the least harmful member of our today's list, but we will continue to monitor it. For the final species in our today's list, we need to travel to the Indo-Pacific region, as this is the native habitat of the lionfish. It is also the first member of the list which doesn't live directly in Texas, but instead inhabits coastal waters. The lionfish is often described as the feral hogs of the sea, as they reduce coral biomass by up to 55% by eating native species, including fish, shrimp, and crabs. You can easily identify this invasive species by its red and white stripes, large fan-like pectoral fins, and venomous dorsal spines, so it's always better to stay away from it to avoid injury. Unfortunately, eradicating lionfish is currently impossible. They reach sexual maturity in less than a year, and one female releases as many as 50,000 eggs every 3 days. In addition, some specimens are found at a depth of 110 centimeters, so even if the first layer of reef are fully cleared, it doesn't mean that the lionfish won't come back. It is suggested that they got into the coastal waters of the United States in the early 1990s when a few specimens escaped the aquarium, or maybe some irresponsible fish owners released them into the ocean. Today, it isn't just a problem of Texas or Florida, but it is the question of the survival of numerous fish and coral species in the Mexican Gulf, as numerous coastal areas are already harmed by the lionfish. The estimated damage to the United States remains unknown, but I believe the numbers have already surpassed a few $billions per year. Lionfish serves as a prime example of why pet owners should be responsible for the animals they keep, as any day, a harmful invasive species could enter our oceans, land, or skies. Remember that we are responsible for those we have tamed. Along with feral hogs, the lionfish is among the most dangerous invasive species inhabiting Texas. Well, that's it for today. Please let me know in the comments below which US state or country you would like to be reviewed for invasive species. I hope you enjoyed this video a lot, so please put a like on it and subscribe to my channel. See you next time, bye bye!